Hello and welcome back to another exciting tutorial, exciting for me at least, and it's all about themes. And if you don't know what a theme is, I will show to you, but I guess you know what a theme is, and it's a really annoying problem. And I found a not simple, but it's an easy solution, I think, to fix that problem, to get rid of all the themes. And I mean all the themes, or at least it's possible to get rid of all the themes, or just the themes you want. Okay, and in my case I tested a displacement/bump map. I used the displacement method both, so it's displacement and the rest is bump mapping. And yeah, this process here could also work for other programs or renderer. The only thing you need is multiple UV maps. This is a requirement, but the rest isn't that special. Okay, I would say let's start. Let's take a look at the picture. And here's a head. And this one is not from me, of course. I'm not a character modeler or something like that. This one is from Aiken. And you can download it for free and use it for test or just look at it, whatever. His website is CG Gallery. And under tutorials, accurate displacement workflow. And there are a few tips here. But yeah, I don't want to talk about these tips. It's all about fixing themes, but it's nice to have such a high quality head for people like me. I'm not really into sculpting heads, but I like to do a skin shader, for example, and then it's nice to have a good head for that. Okay. Oops. Here's the unwrap. Each color is one tile. This one is unwrapped in a UDIM style, very quick. I just selected a face, used the growth function in Blender, and then select the boundaries, boundary loop, and then mark theme, unwrap, done. So that's why it looks a little ugly, but that's not a problem anymore. And then I baked out the maps in Zbrush, and yeah, that's what happens. Ugly themes here and basically everywhere. And then I found the fix, and that's how it looks after the fix. Perfect, I would say. You can't really see the seams anymore. It doesn't matter how close you're zooming in. Yeah, actually I wanted to show you my workflow with this head here, but I can't reproduce these seams anymore. I don't know why, but anyway, I have a different model or two different models. Here's the second, but this is the first one here. Okay, and this was a sphere in Zbrush. Let me select the correct one. This one here, polysphere, and then just sculpted a few details on it, simple details. And then export the lowest version. And one tiny tip, you shouldn't go too low for regular displacement. This here is quite low. Actually I would use this one, but to show it to you better, I use this mesh here. Okay, and then I exported it, imported into Blender, and unwrapped it. Again, in a strange way. There are many themes, but it's just for the demonstration, so I need themes, and very easy here. 8 UV islands, whatever. And then I exported it out of Blender and again into Zbrush. And then you should check your UVs with polygroups, auto groups with UV. Check that, okay, these are the correct ones. And then you just bake out your map. I use these settings. In this case, a 2K map, you can adjust the proper size, whatever map border. It doesn't really matter, just a little bit is okay. Flip B, of course. Adaptive, I would suggest to use adaptive. 3 channels, this is just a Blender thing. If your renderer supports 1 channel maps, then you don't need this. 32-bit, of course, and EXR. It's smaller than TIFF. Okay, and mid value to 0 and DP subpixels to 0 most of the time. There are exceptions for this, but yeah, anyway, it's about the themes, not the settings here. And then just create the maps. Okay. and then load it into Blender and connect it with the displacement slot. Yeah, the standard stuff here, and then I rendered it. Let's see where it is. Here is it. And you can already notice it, I think. Look at this, here is this big fat seam. And here's also a little bit of a seam. But this one here isn't as visible as this one. So, but yeah, this one is here right in your face. Okay. And it's hard to get rid of this. I mean, you could change the seams or whatever, but it's not really a solution. So then I applied my fix and look at the seam, and now, boom, gone. Looks the same, but just without the seam. Okay. As you can see, here is also a seam, and gone. Seam, gone. Okay, and to do that, you have to use a second UV layout. And this one is a little special. Okay, let's kill this here, select this. This one is, this is our regular UV layout, and this is the special UV layout. It looks a little ugly, but in this case it works. And yeah, there's a reason for that layout. Okay, first of all, the idea is to blend two different displacement maps into one to cancel out the seams. It sounds quite simple, and actually it is quite simple. Okay, how do I start? Okay, we want a new map. Let me select something here. That looks like that, for example, but there shouldn't be a seam in the middle. Yeah? This is not allowed. Here it is okay, but in the middle, where the original seam is, there shouldn't be a seam. Never, but sometimes you have to, but then you can use a third map, and I will show to you how. But as a rule, there shouldn't be a seam in this here. Okay, so let's select all the seams. Shift G, select seam, and then use the growth function, Control and numpad plus, so like that. And then you clear the seam and select boundary loop and mark seam. And this one here is basically, this here is our new UV layout. Okay, and if you could cut it, but then you have to use a third map, or you can hide this one seam or two seams or so, but try to avoid more seams. This here looks ugly, but it works, trust me, it works. Okay, and then you unwrap it, and the rest, let's select inverse. This one you should just it should be unwrapped, but it doesn't matter how, and there should be no overlapping faces, and then you just scale it very small and push it in one corner or so. Yeah, like this here. It could be smaller or bigger, whatever. It's not really important. Important is this here. And then you export this model out and import it. But of course you don't work on your original model. Where's the tool? Here. Just duplicate your original model and import it. And then you again check the polygroups with auto groups you with UV, and this is the correct one. And yeah, one simple step, create a map from a displacement map from this UV layout, or for this UV layout. I use the same size, but yeah, you could experiment with this. I mean, a bigger size or smaller, it depends on your UV layout, but the 2K map works fine with this here. But if you use a bigger one for the original UV layout, then use the same size or experiment with it. Okay, and then you bake out the map, same settings, and bring it into Blender. Here it is, Seam Fix Map. And as I said, let's disconnect this one. We blend these two maps together, and of course you assign the proper UV map to it, UV map and fix. Then you blend it with a mix RGB node. The question now is what factor should we use? And that is Again, quite simple. We need our original seams back, so select the UV map and select the seams from islands. So we got our original seams back, and now we can use Vertex Paint to paint the factor. And where do we paint it? Exactly on these seams here, on the original seams. That sounds simple, doesn't it? Okay, well, let's go, and it's already done here, but let's do it. Let's quickly fill this stuff. You fill it with black, 0, 100% black. Make sure it is 0. And then, that's a little small here, so go back into Vertex Paint mode and make sure it's 100% white. Everything is 1, okay? It must, or it should be 1. It could work with like this value here, but make sure it's 1. And then you paint just over the seams. For example, here. That's it. And then just paint everything, okay? And then you can go just into edit mode and look where the seam is. So, and then just paint on it. Okay. Yeah, let's do it quick here. Come on. Okay, that should be fine. Of course, you do it for all the seams you want to cover. You just paint on it with white. So, and this process you could also do in Zbrush, but then you don't have your original seams, so it could be a little bit confusing, but it works the same way. Okay, this is enough. Let me show it to you in Zbrush. And with this one, you just select, or first of all, you switch the color here and you fill it with black, 100% black, and then isolate your UV seams and just paint on it. Oh, of course, you need, oops, isolate it and RGB intensity 100, and then just paint on it. It's the same process, but it could be a little bit confusing if you don't know where the original seams are. Okay, and then finish this and export this map. And it's basically the same as with our vertex map. Okay, let me finish this here up. Oh, here, here, and here. Okay, and make sure you, as you can see, it wasn't 100%. Make sure it's 100%. Yeah, it should be always pure white on the seam. And then you just use an attribute node and yeah, put in the name. And I would also suggest to use a color ramp node to re-ramp these values a bit. Maybe you need a little bit more ones. Yeah, so that it's not just exactly on the seam 1, so it's a little more. And yeah, just play around with these values. Then connect this to your mix node. That's it. That's the whole trick. This here is just the switch between on and off. And then you get this here. This is the fixed version, and there's this version with the seam. Okay, now the last file. I pre-rendered everything, and this is also not my mesh. This, yeah. Let me show it to you something. Where is it here? The original low mesh is this here, but this is too low for displacement. There are artifacts, not just from the seams. This here is too harsh, this edge here, and somewhere here. So I used the one subdivision more, like this here. This is better for displacement. And I used the original layout from this. It looks pretty, but let me, let's go on, where is it? UV map. I mean, the space is filled. Yeah, that looks good, but this is too much for displacement, too many seams for displacement. I would suggest use as least seams as possible. I mean, in this case here you could, let's do that here, let's this. I guess you could merge this into one UV layout or one UV island, yeah. But for these here you have to cut this off. I mean, it's impossible to unwrap it as one piece with these, let's call it horns. Okay. And yeah, first of all, this here's the UV layout you already know. And here's the first fixed version. And as you can see here, I've tried to use as least seams possible. Let's select this one here. But for this here, you have to cut this off. And then I used it again, just for these tiny seams here. Yeah, as you can see, a third map to cover these seams up. I selected the ring, I think, yeah, I selected the ring, but actually it would be enough to just unwrap this here. And then you can use an even lower map, like 1K would be enough for this. Yeah, I did it for all these horns here. That's a little bit confusing, but I will show to you it works. Here's the render result. Okay, that's the base mesh just with subdivision on it, and now it's with displacement. And as you can see here, a lot of seams, and here, and here, and here, and yeah, basically everywhere. There's one, but this one you can't really see, but there's one, and here, this is all seams. And here are more, like this here, this one is really visible, and here. Okay, and then I applied the first fixed map, and then this happens. As you can see, let's switch between them. Seam, no seam. Look here, seam, no seam. And that also works for this part here. Seam, no seam. And as you can see, the mesh looks the same. So, yeah, it's not a... It doesn't change your mesh, it just kills the seams. That's what we want. So here, seam, seam, gone. And then I applied the third map, but you can only see the third map from behind. So I use this camera here. And that is the base mesh, just with subdivision surface on it. And this is with displacement, and as you can see here, horrible seams. Yeah, here is a seam. This one isn't really visible, but there is a seam. You can also look at the UVs here. And then look here, it's a little darker, but these here are really visible. Then I applied the first fixed map, and most of the seams are gone. Just this tiny seam is left. And this comes from this one tiny seam here. And then I applied the second map, and boom, perfect. No seams. Yeah, that's it, basically. I hope this is clear somehow. Basically just cancelling out the seams with one or two maps. I don't think you need more maps, but is there more? No. This file is available, link is in the description, and sure, just play around with it. Okay, thanks for watching, see you in the next video.